Today we are going to be looking at and talking about the psychological theories and the motivation of what drives our behavior. What is the kind of root of that? And in talking about that, we're going to be looking at needs, forces, and drives, and then eventually how that leads to how we act or how we behave. And our human needs, those that are very basic, that are kind of the underlying of all behavior, they demand that they be satisfied. So they will not go without being satisfied. And when it isn't satisfied, then that is when a drive force is aroused. So that is when we are driven to act, basically. And that force or drive is that signal that motivates a person to take action, to satisfy whatever need it might be. And this force will govern how we act, but there's also other things that can influence the choice. So we may act in a certain way, but depending on our culture, depending on our society, and what's acceptable may determine how that behavior looks. So this is the pattern. This is what it might look like. We have a need, you can see at the top, and then that moves to a drive. And from there we go into action. And then because of that action, our drive subsides. Okay, and it kind of continues in this cycle and goes around and around and until, forever, because we are human beings and we will always have those needs that need to be met. One such need is our hunger drive. So what and how we eat is a learned behavior that is dictated by culture. So that is influenced by where we live, what our family eats, how they eat, those types of things. For example, vegetarian might reach for a salad, a meat eater might reach for a hamburger. But when we get right down to it, our very basic need, if we are hungry and have none of that, we will reach for whatever it takes to satisfy the hunger. And as a result, it can be kind of complicated because of all of the different impacts and effects of the different drives. Human behavior is determined by two different types of needs. One is physiological and the other is psychological. So physiological is anything that our body requires to survive. Very basic. So air, food, water, those types of things are, we can't survive without them. Things that we may notice, the different signals that may appear. You may have a tummy grumble. That will signal hungry, of course. You may be thirsty by having a dry mouth. So a couple of examples of that. When we look at psychological needs, this is any motivation that's related to our thoughts and emotions. So our need for love, need for safety and approval. And for example, when we feel depressed, eating chocolate or ice cream may be something we turn to. So we talk about comfort foods, and that is an example. Forces are the motivations that drive you towards action. So they are what kick you in the pants and make you move, make you do something about it. We have sociological forces, and those come from the influence of society. So for example, eating pizza is something that is shared, and therefore it's considered a social activity. Things you may find at a barbecue could be another. Hamburgers, hot dogs, sausage, those types of things are also considered social. Parents and peers, family, they all play a major role in shaping our eating behaviors because, of course, what we see or what we grow up with influences how we act and the choices we make. When we look at cultural forces, those are the results from one's culture. So, for example, in North America, things have sped up dramatically over the last several years, and as a result, we turn to fast foods. We need food that's convenient. We work late, a lot of commuting, so people are eating in their cars. So it really impacts what kind of choices we make to meet our needs. You may not get that in other countries, and you may find that countries where it's not so fast-paced sit down with their family every night, and that's something that drives them. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of application activities for you to apply, or situations for you to apply the different needs and forces. So I'll read them off to you, and you just jot down what you think. You can obviously pause and replay and go back to the beginning of the video and review so that you're very familiar with what applies to what. So number 1, apply the needs and forces to the following scenario. Number 1, it was 2 o'clock and Tracy is hungry. Her stomach is growling and she is getting hunger pains. She decides to wait until 6 p.m., however, so she can eat with her family. So you need to identify both the need and the force. Number 2, Greg was having a terrible day. Anything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Even his girlfriend was not talking to him. Peter, his friend, asked him to go grab a burger to eat after basketball practice. Greg was not hungry, but he went anyway. So what is the need and what is the force? Number 3, a huge brownie sits on Carrie's plate. She knows that she's on a diet and cannot eat it. She's not even hungry after that huge meal. Her mind tempts her. She ponders on the idea. It has been such an awful week. To top it off, it's Friday night and all her friends have dates. She is lonely and depressed. She decides to eat the brownie, and for the moment, she feels better. What is the need and what is the force? And the last scenario, Gianna gets off work at 5 o'clock. She has to pick up her daughter Taylor by 5:30 at her mother's place. Her husband will be home at 6. She doesn't have time to cook. Besides, it's Friday and she has had a rough week. She feels so tired. She decides to call out and order food in. What is the need and what is the force? And I will leave you with that. Bye for now.